Today, we will look at my losing trades, my winning trades, my break-even trades, my trading mistakes. This will be a crazy trading video for day traders and scalpers. You'll learn about supply and demand trading, range trading methods, and liquidity hunts. In the final section, I'll show my trades and the missed trades recently. We have so much to do. If you're ready, let's start. Welcome our free trading course, all about price action trading strategies and smart money concepts. If you love scalping and day trading, check out my free course. You can find the links on Google Drive or directly from my website, which is in the description. And please try to watch the videos in order, otherwise it can be really confusing. Okay, let's start with the 1 hour chart, the best way to see price action on Bitcoin nowadays. As you know, price swept this giant internal liquidity, moved to the new levels, and got some reaction, also creating very nice ranges to trade. Now first, let's focus on the left part. Do you keep checking the left of your chart? Most of you still not do it. This is the most important aspect of price action. Checking the previous price movements and structures. Now, what do you see here? I want you to focus on this giant 1 hour imbalance. Right below it, there is the failed to return area. Also, you can count them as order block zone. But I do not focus on precision. I'm mostly focusing on general supply and demand areas that prices can react to. And there is this nice relative equal highs area. Overall, this is a very nice price zone, support and resistance zone that price can react to. You can also find order block, mitigation block, and other price action structures in this area. However, let's just focus on these structures for now. Let's get back to the most recent price action, our present day, using the 30 minutes time frame. If you just draw all the price action structures that we identified in 1 hour across the screen, you'll notice this. 1 hour equals highs being hunted, and the price reacts to the supply area. Later on, it moves on to the 1 hour imbalance and reacts again. As you can see, nothing happens in a random way. Everything reacts to something, which is the basic rule of the universe. Action, reaction. It also creates our lovely range. Many of you already become range trading masters. Now with this range, I also kept my eye on the imbalance below and the very obvious equal lows. I originally wanted to sweep these equal lows and touch the imbalance and then start a rally upwards. However, what the market does and what you expect will not match all the time. Not much to do about it. Once the price hunted this internal liquidity and 1 hour equal lows and reacted to our 1 hour supply zone, I took my first trade right at this area. Now let's dive into the 2-minute time frame and check what we have. Okay, let's see. After the powerful reaction, you can notice this giant imbalance created. If you watched my recent videos, we also learned about wicked balanced price ranges. Why do we use BPR? It just helps us to reduce possible entry areas inside giant imbalances. Some imbalances will be extremely huge. It will create some confusion among traders. This is also small but significant support and resistance flip area. What else do we have here? A little internal liquidity area to be cleared. Now let's talk about this trade. Actually, I did not manage this trade really well. My mistake. In these videos, I will also talk about my mistakes and break-even trades. Now, mostly kept this trade until the range EQ area because the price was struggling significantly around the range EQ. So, I had to close this trade way too early. However, as you can see later on, the price moved to the exact target, which was range low. So sometimes you have to make decisions. For this trade, I did not manage it really well. Let's talk about more mistakes. In 2022, the most of my trades were short-based trades. Do not get me wrong, I kinda mastered short trading and really being good at it. But it is wrong, actually very, very wrong. A trader should never fully focus on or be obsessed with a directional bias. Your analysis and mind should be free of obsession. You should be able to long or short depending on daily conditions. This is my biggest mistake. It makes me miss many long opportunities. This year, I will work on it more and try to fix this. Okay, let's see these possible long trades that I have missed. You can see the slowly building internal liquidity right at this point. So, most optimal trade would be this. Price sweeps the equal lows and touches the imbalance. I should have done this. Just set a limit order here, right at the level of equal lows. I could have done this. In this case, the price never came back at this level. However, this would be a proper setup to trade. Let's check another long trade that I have missed again. You can see these structural breaks right here. All these indicate very strong breaks, giving us bullish vibes and clues inside the range. You can also see this internal liquidity sweep. This is inducement. Basically fuel before the counter move. Now right here after inducement, right after the price touches the range low, price also at significant demand levels. I should have taken this trade with reduced risk against the equal lows below. This is actually one of our significant range trading strategies. This is my mistake that I shall be working on this year. Let's talk about the break-even trade which stopped out. With this range, I immediately noticed one of my favorite trading methods, the reverse optimal trading entry strategy. The equal lows and imbalances below, liquidity ounce above. It was the perfect ROTE. Price also created this nice 3-tap pattern which gave me extra confidence. Let's zoom in a bit and see it more clearly. What else do we have here? The very significant and giant imbalance which I love. Also this nice internal liquidity is fully swept. For this trade I did not need to go lower than 15 minutes because I had reverse optimal trade entry, 3-tap pattern, imbalance, internal liquidity sweep, also range high deviation area. It was like all the stars were aligning for me. I made my entry after rejection. I had multiple targets in my mind. Range EQ, range low, imbalance below and equal lows from 1 hour. Once the price reached the range EQ area, I took some profit, but not much. I had greater targets below. I moved to stop loss to break even. As you can see, even though I set this one as a high probability trade, it did not work well. It just stopped me out. Yes, I get stopped out. It is just natural. Let's finish the video with this monster trade. Most of my Twitter followers also took this trade. Many did much better than me because I was too late to enter. As you can see, the price finally moved to 1 hour imbalance, which also swept away this liquidity. It also started to build internal liquidity below. This is my favorite trading setup. I just love this one. Let's zoom in on low time frames. First, I'll show you the best entry possible, which I missed. I'm missing too much trades nowadays because I was not in front of the computer or giving attention to something else at that time. After the imbalance touch and liquidity sweep, the price makes the first market structure shift. A weak break, but still a break. It also leaves this giant imbalance above, of course the internal liquidity. If you use your premium and discount tool with Fibonacci, everything is here. The perfect entry. Actually, the best sniper entry that you can ever take in your life. My entry was actually way too late. I was barely able to catch the move. After the market structure break, the price created the first break of structure. And then it was preparing to create a second break of structure. So the order flow was bearish, and it was obvious this internal trend shifted bearishly. As a first target, this nice imbalance below and small equal lows were great. So, this was my entry. Very late, but still good enough. I did not fully close the position. I left some in trade for possible runners because there were many targets below. Okay folks, with this video, we have learned a lot about managing trades and useful trading methods. These are very important supply and demand strategies used for day trading and scalping. I believe that it will be really helpful in your trading life. I hope you subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you, please take care and see you soon.